Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling more misunderstood than when it started? Maybe you said the wrong thing. Maybe you didn't say anything at all. And now the silence feels louder than the words you didn't speak. Communication is something we all do every day, yet it's also one of the hardest skills to truly master. Today we're diving into what makes communication break down and how the three pillars of respect, clarity, and active listening can transform not just our conversations, but our relationships and our lives. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates. This is the new Ashla Podcast.
Yes, it is.
Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. Today we're diving into communication. I feel this is a topic that's really important to address right now with all the chaos going on in the world, and we need to learn how to break through these barriers and start having hard conversations. And so I'm hoping that this conversation sheds light on what to look for, how to go about them, help us pursue conversations with more than just points and trying to scream over each other, but instead to have conversation that is meaningful and respectable, where we can start working together to find truth instead of trying to badger our points home. So what are your thoughts about communication in this day and age, Justin?
It's horrible. It's not always horrible. It's not always horrible. It's a very difficult thing to master. Humans have been around for a really long time, and we still are trying to figure it out, right? I mean, we've got some good ideas, and some of us just seem to be better at it than others. But you're right. We got to stop learning to listen to what people are saying just so we can talk, just so we can respond. We got to learn to be quiet sometimes and just listen and actually hear what people are saying, you know. And there's a whole host of other things. But the problem is communication feels hard because words carry more than just the ideals we're trying to express.
Yeah.
They carry our fears, they carry our pride, they carry our wounds sometimes. And really for a lot of people, it's our way of trying to be seen, trying to be heard. So we're not communicating from a good place. We're communicating from a place of, as you said, shouting over each other, even when we're not actually shouting, right? We're still trying to shout over each other. I want to be seen. Hear me. Listen to me. So, and when we speak without this kind of awareness, we risk separating ourselves from each other and from that collective interconnectedness. You know, remember, connection is heaven and disconnection is hell. So communication is one of those things that literally is one of the ways we connect. That's just what humans do. We speak, we talk. And if we can't talk, we try to communicate in other ways. But communication is communication is communication. It doesn't matter what avenue you're carrying it from, you know, whether it's you're signing or you're writing or you're speaking. So and it feels hard. It does feel hard for a lot of us. And even those of us who are pretty good at it. I've talked myself out of way more trouble than I've ever had to get into.
Right.
And in my old life, you know, that was really important because everywhere I went, I was outnumbered. So a lot of times I had to learn to be very, very clear in my communication. So, but it is hard. And on the other side of this, when that communication finally breaks down and we stop speaking at all, we stop talking to each other at all, we leave the door open for, you know, things like assumption and resentment and, of course, distance.
Isolation. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say one of the greatest reasons we're facing such an issue with communication in this day and age is everyone feels so much uncertainty for what's ahead of us. And there's nothing human nature dreads more than uncertainty. And it's flipping people into these survival modes when it comes to topics that are of personal opinion. And the issue with that is we all have these opinions. And it's great we formulated it from the information we've gathered through our lives, from our peers, from our own perceptions through the lives we've lived. But when we are so attached to our own perspectives, we choose that over truth. And when we do that, that's when it becomes more of a battle of wills than a genuine discussion to find wisdom and knowledge.
There's a lot of pride and there's a lot of hurt and there's a lot of things that just make communication impossible sometimes. And where our words and thoughts are coming from, that place we're coming from, if it's rooted in half truths, what do you expect to get? What do you expect? Here out here, if this is rotten, and I'm not saying people are necessarily rotten, some of them are. The ones who profit off of us not being able to communicate, they definitely are rotten. But, what do you expect to happen when we can't come from a good place? And that's why we harp on the truth. We hammer it and hammer it and hammer it, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how much we don't want to be truthful sometimes because we don't want to hurt people. If we don't come from that place, then everything that comes out of us is only half true or not true at all. And that's rotten. That's rotten. It is what it is.
Yeah. No, that's so well said, though, because we get so stuck on our opinions with these things that we embody from hearsay and from just personal drive. Let me associate this emotion with this problem. And it ends up making it where when we have, like you said, when we have these discussions, it comes out as half truths, because often it's like so many people talk politics nowadays. One of the reasons I avoid politics like the plagues with people is because even with the opinion I have, I'm not an expert in any one of these fields. I don't have the statistics. I haven't done the research. I'm not going to battle you on points when I don't have the facts right there.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where when we start adhering to what we see, social media, I mean, companies thrive on horrible news because it gets views. And they will push stuff into algorithms that will incite so much emotion because it lines their pockets. But it inflames it inflames people's opinions, and
they love it.
They
love it. And that topic is rotten from the core too. We cannot thrive if we are separated, period. And all politics does, in my experience, in my 48 years of being on this planet, never seen politics do anything but divide. Because it's this team versus this team. And if you don't want to catch hell from somebody, then you have to pick a side. Well, I refuse to. Our axioms teach us to stand away from corruption. And I will. I want to meet people where they're at, not the teams they root for, not the jerseys they wear. So this is why, I've said it before, I don't have opinions. I don't give opinions, because opinions are judgments in disguise, and I'm not going to judge in that way. Of course, I make judgments throughout my day. Do I take this road or this one? Or what am I eating today? Or ouch, that hurt. Or hey, stop hurting that person, whatever. But, I'm not interested in dividing people, period. And this isn't me, fence sitting. But I'm sick and tired of hearing the whataboutisms everywhere. What about this? What about this? What about this? That's just people shouting at each other. Okay, so without getting too worked up over it or getting too deep into those our philosophy, and just as a reminder, the path of Ashla is not a religion. It's a path. It's a philosophical path that is a companion to people's already held beliefs if they walk in the light, right? It enhances our beliefs if we walk in the light already. It's not meant to replace anything. It's not meant to, you don't find salvation through me or through the path of Ashla. It's meant to enhance you so that you can show up and be aware and be authentic. So, I talk a lot about building bridges. I do not want to see people building these prisons around themselves. I can't make them do anything, and I never will. But you can take those stones and turn them into bridges. Everything can bridge if you are ready to do the hard thing, and that's to come from a place of truth. Because healthy communication is not about talking more. It's not about more of this. It's about adjusting how you speak and how you listen, right? It's about speaking with love, but listening with integrity.
Beautiful.
and always staying rooted in truth. I have a man that I consider a mentor to me, who has really let me down lately, because they present one way here and then they present another way here. And that troubles me, Michael, because that's a lack of integrity. Now,
I would agree with
in
that.
all the years you've known me, and I'm not bragging, but in all the years that you've known me, have I ever been different in public versus private?
No,
Even
not at all.
though, I'm not always right and sometimes I embarrass myself, but I always stick to the truth. So, it's not about speaking more, it's about speaking with love and respect. It's about listening with integrity and always, always, always coming from a place of truth. Damn your opinions, damn your sides. What is actually happening? What is the truth? It's not always pretty, and most times it's hard. So that is what transforms these misunderstandings, these assumptions, this bullcrap into breakthroughs, into healthy communication. That's what turns words into bridges. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the points you're making, I mean, one of the key things we were going to touch on in this episode is the three pillars of healthy communication, which you pretty much sort of touched on with what you said there. But let's dive into it, all right? Respect. You have to respect the person you're talking to. You got to treat them with dignity. You know, you got to you got to have kindness as you're in these interactions, and that can be so difficult. But that's what integrity is.
we say you gotta. I mean, I guess you don't have to if you don't want to, but this is what you're going to keep getting, right? You don't have to respect anybody, but one of our ethos is what? Respect all life, the sanctity for life, right? And connection. Because everything we say, everything we do, everything we think, everything we resonate with ripples out and touches every other thing. God, he says that a lot. Yeah, I do. You know why? Because it's important. It's the truth. Connection is one of our ethos, right? The purpose of dialogue is not to win, unless you're in a debate team or something. But we're not talking about being in the debate club and going, having these competitions. We're talking about everyday communication with people. And not saying things is saying things too sometimes. So,
Yeah.
so this, I want to touch upon something for a second before we move too far ahead, because I think the points that you wanted to make today, and this is your show. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but when I do the intro, it's my show. When he does it, it's his show. We just trade off, right? But you gave me a set of notes with some bullet points, and I think I want to touch upon some of those real quick, because I think they're really, really important to kind of where you've taken us, right? In this.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I
show.
love is when I create these notes, we get into these shows. I mean, I love your perspective on things, and I love when you dive into them. So please go right ahead.
Well, so why it feels hard is because we have fear. And we get defensive. We take things personally, right? Even though it may not even have anything to do with us, honestly. But we take things personal because, well, that's my team. Don't talk crap about my team. Or we take it personally like somebody is personally attacking us, which that's an assumption, unless you know. And sometimes they are attacking you. I'm not saying that that's never a thing. But if you're being guided by fear, these hard conversations press up against our will to survive. It triggers our instincts sometimes.
And often our core wounds.
Right. And nowadays I see, and I shouldn't say nowadays, I apologize, because humans are humans and we evolve over large portions of times. Humans are probably pretty close to, at least in this aspect. But our nervous system will take disagreement or something, and especially if we take it personally, as danger. And that's why we often will respond with fight or flight or freeze. But mostly it's, we just get really defensive, or we start avoiding, or we just shut up and we just stop engaging. But as this axiom reminds us, confusion distorts reason. When in doubt, do not act. Seek guidance and proceed cautiously. And that guidance doesn't have to be in the form of another person. just pause and ask yourself, talk to yourself about this. Is this really happening? Is this person actually attacking me? Is this person, I don't like what they're saying, so I got to defend myself? And sometimes that's true. Again, I'm not saying that it's not true. But, if we're allowing ourselves to be struck by words, then we're in trouble. The guidance here is having patience and trying our best to see where the other person's coming from. See them as a human being first. Yes. And then if you really have to get into all the us versus them stuff, at least try to make that your secondary thing. Try to see people as people, So, fear, fear is such a bastard.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, and it's crazy how, when we get triggered like that, our nervous systems kick online, parts of our brains start shutting down, other parts start escalating. The amygdala, the seat of our emotions, will flare up like a mother trucker, and if we're not careful, it will run the show. And if we don't take time to have that pause, to evaluate these emotions coming up, to allow ourselves to calm our nervous system and realize I'm about to act from a place of not integrity, but instead from defense or from anger. The conversation can go sour in a minute, and it sucks sometimes when you're dealing with it on the other end. My dad raised me with the concept, take the high road. And it's like there's times where those conversations do build up, and I'll be like, look, we can't have this conversation right now. I respect you. I hear you. I respect your opinion. But right now, we're not having meaningful dialogue, so I think we should stop.
These fixed perspectives, these echo chambers, I've talked about this before. And they're dangerous because they're a trap. I have found myself inside of echo chambers. I have found myself, deep into the woods and go, oh, crap.
Yep.
I'm now just repeating what somebody I don't even know said. I'm not even using my own mind here. And a lot of us get stuck in these echo chambers. And it's a trap. It's a communication trap. And we cling to our perspectives as if it were truth itself. And we do it in our relationships, with our families, our communities, with these hot button topics that it's just all around us all the time. And we just sit in these echo chambers, which is kind of like a prison as far as I'm concerned. At least it felt like that to me, where I'm just shouting at myself and it just bounces back. Oh, that's great. Somebody agrees with me.
Validating.
It's right? And then we start to mistake that for like a voice of wisdom or something.
Yep. But
truth challenges us. Truth is not what makes us comfortable. It's what sets us free. But it's a hard road.
Yeah.
Because really, if we're not unwilling to hear each other, if we just separate into our echo chambers, then we're just stuck in that distortion forever until we break free of it.
Well, it's like perception is reality. And the more, I think one of the greatest issues is when we lost religion in this country, or in the world, when we lost community. And I'm not saying religion as far as without God, you're not okay, but the community involved in that. Being around people with different beliefs, opinions, allowed you a space where people could be brothers while having disagreements. One of my favorite quotes by you, one of the things that stuck with me the most in my training is, debate and discussion is the ripe soil where wisdom and truth is gained. Because we can have only half a perspective and not even know it. But if we're so rigid on holding on to that, we will never see the full picture.
And of course, take us through the cost of disconnection, this isolation. When we finally get to the point where we just shut up and we just go away.
Well, and it's crazy. That's one of the reasons we get so triggered. We get so lost in these echo chambers. We start building our own little building blocks of what reality looks like. And again, this is one of the things with the separation of these communities. We start going into tribalism. And it's like, we all share the same building blocks. We're going to build a little hut around ourselves. But the minute anything comes that challenges what that hut is made out of, it becomes war.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because then everything becomes a threat. Everything. Yes. Even thoughts and words become threats because we do this. We separate and we disconnect. This is why Ashla was always meant to be a companion and not a religion or whatever. Because when we allow the philosophy to be a companion to that, keeps the doors open for anyone who wants to come in and not so much debate with us, which is okay too, but to understand that these we share more similarities with each other than we do differences.
Yeah.
Now of course, if some somebody who follows a religion or a philosophy that's all about murder, death, kill or something, of course they're not going to get along with us very well, because that obviously
Yeah.
is against our core, right?
Yeah.
But
Well,
we
the
have
way I
to learn to
view
be
our
companions with
philosophy, and
each
this is
other.
what I love about, yeah. Well, we have to. I mean, that's the thing is, again, when we start deciding someone is a bad person based on one opinion, I mean,
Or
that is the
based on
worst.
or just based on arbitrary bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things about us humans that we can't help. We just can't help it. That doesn't make us bad, though,
Right. I completely agree
right?
with that.
And I think a lot of people actually agree with that, but we're just not speaking up. We're isolating now. We're just segregating ourselves from each other, and it's not just politics. Let's not mess around here. It's not just politics. It could be where you're from. It could be the color of your skin. It could be whatever. Okay, we're starting to disconnect again, and it doesn't make any sense to me, because when we're connected, we thrive. We thrive together. And you were in the military. I was in the military. We've talked about that before, but I didn't see the large scale segregation of ourselves, and we're doing it to ourselves, and it's for a million different reasons, and I don't know why, because humans thrive on connection. We thrive on connection. As it concerns communication, when that starts to happen, when that disconnection happens, we do more than just miss each other's points. We start to miss each other.
Yeah.
We start to pull away and disconnect, and that's the root of a lot of suffering. We've talked about that before many times. Disconnection from each other, it leads to pain and suffering sometimes. Well, a lot of times. But deeper still is that disconnection from our own authenticity, because then we start pulling away not only from each other, but we start pulling away from who we really are, because then we have all these external pressures. Okay, keep your voice down or hide who you are. There is not one good thing that comes from that. If anybody out there can name one good thing from disconnecting from each other, put it in the comments, and then we'll have a conversation.
Well, and it's crazy. You see this a healthy conversation.
Yeah. We'll try anyway.
But you see it everywhere today. I talk to so many people. I love people. I love connection. But it's crazy how many people, quote unquote, hate people. And it breaks my heart when I talk to people about this, because people get so lost in their feelings that they would rather cut people out of their life and just consider everyone else ignorant and stupid. That's the one I hear the most is, people are just stupid. And it's like we're all stupid to some degree. You got to give people their humanity. And if you're going to just rule everybody out, you're cutting yourself off from so much gain when it comes to cultivating strength. I'm in positive psychology this semester, and I was reading this chapter on connection. That is this week's big topic. And they talk about how you look at the well being of people as they get older, with people who have friends and connections compared to those who isolate. And it's dramatic. The health benefits of having connection, the mental health benefits, the level of confidence and courage and just self respect that comes from putting yourself around people. And it's because we need people in our lives to act as mirrors, to tell us when we're doing good, to help validate where we're at, and to also say, hey, maybe you should cut that out. And that's where people decide to just cut people out. Don't tell me how to be. And again, it's like you don't have to take everyone's word personally, but there's some good feedback sometimes from people. Chew it, put it in your mouth, decide if it's a good thing to embody, or decide they're just in their feelers. But, you know,
Yeah, it doesn't
connection
mean you
is,
have to agree with everything or anything. You don't have to
yeah,
agree with anything. If it goes against your character and your integrity, and you don't have to agree.
yeah,
You don't have to, but you know, connection reminds us that every conversation that we have, or every time we allow ourselves to listen, it's a chance to not show ourselves how divided or different we are, but it's a chance for us to affirm our shared humanity, because we have a lot more in common than we not. It's just
And
really scary and really hard for a lot of people, because they're like, because again, they make these assumptions, or I don't know, man.
well, it's kind of like the echo chamber thing. The longer you spend in there, the harder it's going to be when you start busting those walls down, the more uncomfortable it's going to be. I mean, that's just how we're prone to the path of least resistance. And when you get comfortable being isolated, it's hell trying to break out of that. And it's like, I respect if you're going through that. If you find yourself isolated, because there was an isolation epidemic going on, it is not easy. One of the things I coached a client this week on is this, like, you need to find yourself a group of people doing something you enjoy or want to pursue. Is that art? Is that hiking? Whatever. Go to that group. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be in your head. You're not going to network that good. But keep showing up. Break through that comfort zone. The best lives we could live on the other side of discomfort.
Yeah, you're right.
Practice, practice, practice.
Practice, 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 especially when it's hard. That's the best time to practice. So what are these 3 pillars of healthy communication that you're going to take us into today?
So we're diving in a bit into respect, which respect, again, we are all humans. We must give each other the same respect we want given to us, even if we're not given it in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, and respect doesn't mean agreeing.
No, it doesn't.
It just means honoring the other person's humanity.
Right. Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the foundation of every healthy, meaningful exchange. And it does not require agreement. It does not care about agreement. But it does require some kind of recognition that the person in front of you carries the same spark, the same humanity that you do, the same light that you do. And if you could at least do that, even in the greatest disagreements, at least you've held their humanity sacred. Right?
Yeah.
To honor the dignity of another person, even when you can't honor their choices. It's perfectly okay to not be able to understand or even agree with people's choices, but at least try to honor the fact that they're a human being and that life is the most precious thing in this universe.
Amen to that.
You know,
then there's
the sanctity of life reminds us, one of our ethos reminds us that every conversation, again, is a chance to affirm how much humanity we share and how sacred that spark is in each of us.
Yeah.
Because it was put there, that spark was put there before any of us ever learned how to say any words or form any opinions or whatever, right?
Yeah.
If you can at least do that, those are huge steps towards at least having some kind of respectable conversation or communication.
Agreed. And it's like when it comes to people, and other than like close people you already know, when you're meeting people, when you're trying to network, you know, you don't have to dive into controversial topics. All you got to do is find similar interests, which is so easy to do in this day and age. I think it's always been that way. But it's just, you start the conversation looking into where is your humanity aligned, which is in more places than not, as we brought up earlier. You know, start building that connection based on shared values and shared drive. And through that, you can cultivate a relationship where you then can go into harder conversations. But
Yeah.
But all you're going to do when you try to dive into that with someone new is the emotions go up, and that's where people start getting into the I hate other people because that they just have their opinions, and it's like we're all so alike. We're the same light. We're just covered by different scars and different experiences in life that made us the way we are and gave us the perspective we have. But at the core, we have the same values more often than not. I'm not saying all the time, but you would be amazed just what percentage people are more like you than you realize.
Yeah. Yeah. We just have to put ourselves out there authentically and vulnerably. You know, we got to surrender to that uncomfortable feeling sometime, right? The axiom that ties into this, and this is what I teach you and my students, is the master remains humble, so beings do not exalt him or her. The master remains a servant, so beings do not seek to make him or her a ruler. Because at the end of the day, and this is why I teach you this, respect grows from humility. Not trying to be superior, not trying to be the loudest loudest voice in the room, but by being humble, emptying your cup a little bit. Even the master does that, right?
Yeah.
Because the student is the best teacher. Always, always, and always and forever. Everything can be a teacher if you let it.
Yeah.
So,
one of the greatest gifts I have is I'm not a competitive person. And by that, when I meet people, I never have that drive to one up or to try to show them. It's just, let's connect. Like, I see you as another me. Again, I've brought this up a couple times. I heard this quote and I love it. And it's like, treat every person like the second coming of Christ. And it doesn't mean worship them. It doesn't mean praise them. But it means you don't know who they are, but they are a light that is carrying their own burdens. And you got to respect that. So when we dive into the second pillar, clarity and honesty, it is about saying what you mean and meaning what you say. It is being able to express yourself from a place of an inner locus of control, which means that you're not saying what you say to try to get a rise out of other people or to get validation. It is simply being authentic in your word to be your most authentic self. And again, use discretion. Like, again, you're meeting someone for the first time. It doesn't mean jump into these strong opinions, but it does mean don't try to hide your truth away from others.
No. Because clarity in this regard is compassion.
And this might sound paradoxical to what we've been saying, but again, discernment is the fine line that shows how this connects.
Well, clarity is compassion because when we sugarcoat things, or we give half-truths, or we avoid, or we dance around the truth, we trade that short-term comfort for long-term confusion. Right? So healthy communication requires that we say what we mean and that we mean what we say. Because the thing about truth, it may sting a little bit, but it can also heal. But with truth comes the agreement of responsibility. We are responsible for the words we speak, the thoughts we have, the actions we take, and we're responsible for the amount of weight that those things have. So, and of course, the axiom that ties into this is an easy one. Truth has no regard for popularity. It just doesn't. Honesty, truth does not seek approval. It doesn't care for our approval. It seeks alignment with light. That's what truth does.
And part of this is being able to own up to when you're wrong. Being able to take feedback or learn something new that is opposed to your beliefs and being able to say, hey, I didn't see this before.
Yeah, and work really hard to not get worked up before you come to that.
Yeah.
To that moment of clarity, right?
Yeah.
Like anybody else, it happens to me sometimes. If someone catches me off guard with something and I'm not careful and I take it personally, when it almost always isn't about me, right? I got to try to stop my thermostat from hitting the ceiling before I realize, oh, okay. Well, that was a weird thing that you said, or, you can deal with it however you want. But I want you to think about truth as being both a shield and a lamp. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because it protects us from the fog and the illusion and distortion, but it also illuminates the path forward. It does both things for us. In a healthy communication, that's really important. Both clear away any misunderstandings or assumptions and try to clear that fog so that you know exactly what I'm trying to communicate to you. And if I'm not, then I need to do maybe a better job. But it also, once all that stuff is moved out of the way, then we both can have a path ahead of us where we can take this communication.
So for the third pillar, active listening.
Really the hardest one, right?
Yeah. Because when we get in our feelers, it's hard to not just try to keep planning the next thing you're going to say, trying to look for the flaws in the other person's words so that you can just get right at them, match their energy.
That's why I'm not a big fan of debate, competitive debate. And I know it has its place maybe, but I just personally don't enjoy it because you're not actually learning anything. At least I don't. I don't learn anything by debating somebody because I can turn any amount of evidence into something that fits my narrative. I can take the same
Yeah.
the same statistics as you are if we're debating each other, and I can take the exact same numbers that you have and the exact same facts and twist those to meet my agenda. And I don't know how you can learn that way. I mean, certainly it makes you a better public speaker, maybe, but listening is not waiting for your turn to talk. That's not what listening is.
Yeah, no.
It's choosing to hear them, to hear what they're saying and take them at their word. And if what they're saying is crazy or it sounds unbelievable to you, active listening is also not just using your ears, but it uses your mouth to say, could you say that in a different way, or can you clarify that, because I have no idea what you're talking about. So it shifts us from, like you said, like kind of like rehearsing these rebuttals in our mind while they're just gabbing away at us, right? And we're going through this rehearsal, like, okay.
It's like, I'm definitely guilty of this. I've had plenty of those conversations.
Well, you're like, you pick this out and you pick this out and you pick this out. You and I have had these conversations.
Yeah.
But I refuse to debate you. My lovely wife, she does this a lot, where she just waits for me to speak so that she can argue a point, and it could have been three words in a sentence, and she's clinged on to that, and we've worked together over the years to kind of be better listeners for each other. Because I'll tell you what, even though I'm not looking to debate her on something, it's easy to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
When somebody grabs just words out of a paragraph that you've just spoke, and now you feel like now you got to defend yourself, right? And it's like, and then you just get dragged into that. So, what I've learned to do over the years is be silent and just listen and let them get it all out of their mouth. And then what I'll say is, okay, so clearly you didn't hear what I said. So let me say it again. Because what that does is it causes them to think about, because, sometimes we do this without even knowing it.
No, that's an effective approach, yeah.
I mean, if someone says something to you that's even if it's hurtful or they were trying to hurt you, say, I'm sorry, did you just say blah, 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 whatever it is? It puts it back on them, right? So, but you can't do that unless you're actively listening with everything. You're listening with your eyes. You're listening with your ears. You're listening with your words. You're listening with your body because you're feeling things out. So, this ties into the agreement of patience, doesn't it?
Yep.
Right? Because
100%.
We have to learn to listen to people, again, in totality, and be patient enough to give them the time and presence to get out what they need to get out, or to say what they need to say. Because, depending on the topic and depending on the circumstances around it, it could be very difficult to have these kind of conversations, especially, with loved ones or something, where there may be consequences to what we say. So we got to be patient. We got to let them get through it, and they need to give us patience too. And we got to be patient with ourselves, because we have to say, I don't want to hurry through this because I don't want to get tripped up and fall into some trap.
Right.
So,
one of my favorite things to do when I'm in a heated argument with someone I care about, and this usually, I gotta say for intimate relationships is when you can really get this going, is I start implementing, like, all right, I'm going to tell you what I heard you say, and you can correct if I heard you wrong. And that gives you time to really digest what the other person said and allow yourself to have feedback that is more than just forcing an opinion. It gives you the ability to digest what they said and make a meaningful response. And then in turn, they do the same thing. You express your side, they repeat back to you what they heard, and it helps really clear out a lot of the miscommunication that happens.
Yeah, and but also make sure that you give yourself enough time and you're patient with yourself enough that the things that you say are coming from that center, from the truth, from integrity, leaning on connection, but coming at people with love and respect.
Yes.
You don't have to be in love with somebody. This is the thing about love that just kind of has driven me crazy, because a lot of people didn't learn good love or true love or compassionate love growing up. So they mistake love is only this or this or this or this. No, love is, by our definition, that unconditional compassion for people, because simply because they are a spark of the universe, they are a spark of creation. They were put here for a purpose, and we must honor that no matter how much they stumble. And if that's what love is. Unconditional love means that your love for them is not based on anything that they believe, based on, the choices they make in their lives or the things that they suffer, especially those things that had nothing to do with them. They just exist, and now they're suffering with these particular things that we like to pick on and segregate from. So love, in this sense, connection, is at least having that, again, goes back to that basic sanctity for life, the respect for life. If you can start there, it makes your heart more open to having these meaningful conversations. And when you truly actively listen with your whole being, with your presence, your true authentic presence, that affirms to the other person, but it also reaffirms to you that you guys are not invisible to each other. You're not just an enemy, or you're just not just a person on the other side or whatever, okay? It allows them to become authentic in your presence. So the axiom that ties into this is perception is reality. One of your favorites, perception is reality, right? And if we can listen actively, we learn how another person's perspective and how they perceive the world, even if it's not in our own perspective. We get to learn more about the greater world if we allow ourselves.
A good general rule of thumb, like if you seek to understand the other person before you are understood yourself, that can go miles for having a great, healthy communication where not only can you learn something new, but you can help the other person see your perspective from a non-aggressive place, or at least a decently non-hostile place. But again, seek understanding before seeking to be understood.
I love how you put this in our show notes today as we move on into these common barriers, these pitfalls that we fall into, these traps I was talking about. I love this first one. Assumption making, right? Assumption making, but mind reading. Can you explain that to me?
Man, when you think that you know what the other person is thinking, feeling, and knowing, like, man, I can't tell you how many of the hard conversations I've had, the ones that I have to be like, let's not have this conversation, stem from people thinking they know exactly what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what my opinions are. They already know who I am better than I do, and I'm guilty of it too. I have gotten in those heated arguments where I'm the person on the other end, where it's like, I know where they're going with this. I know where their stance are. I've already made my judgments. And it's crazy. And then on the other side, there's also the mind reading of, they already know what I'm thinking. They know what I'm feeling right now. So we make assumptions of what we believe other people are already thinking and feeling, which is so terrible because 9 out of 10, it's just projection. We are only projecting our own traumas, our own experiences with other people, not even this person, this own unique human being. We are defining them as someone from our past. And that is the worst thing you can do. I think that ties into why so many people hate other people, is they just decide it's easier to classify everyone as this one asshole they dealt with 10 years ago.
Right. So again, I love this. I love the mind reading thing, because we do try to be mind readers. Probably one of the easiest ways communication breaks down is because we do expect others just to know what we need, or to just know what we meant, or know how we feel. And this happens, I see this a lot in my life because, and I'll use mine and Heather's relationship as an example again, because we've been together for so long, it feels like we should know. And that means nothing. Just because we've been together for a really long time Doesn't mean
Yeah.
that I always will know or she will always will know, but we get kind of lazy, right? We get kind of complacent and we say, well, you should know better. You know me. I've been around for all these years of my life. How do you not know? Right?
Right.
That's not communication. That's maybe projection, but definitely on our part, it's laziness and complacency for us because you do fall into this lull, right? And
Yep.
you get to where you're like, we probably do know everything there is to know about each other at this point. That doesn't mean that we know how each other's feeling in the moment or what we meant or what we need, right? We have to
Yep.
learn, and we've had to learn to really communicate this and not make assumptions and not try to read each other's mind.
Yeah.
She probably doesn't know she probably doesn't want to know what's going on in this crazy thing all the time.
Yeah, right? Well,
Right?
and I mean, it's
So,
like the whole we're reborn every year, every day. We're a different person. And our needs change, the
eventually,
way
yeah.
we approach life change, our perspective changes, and
Yeah.
you can't expect your partner to have a full, detailed list of all the parts of you that are changing at all times. That's just
Right.
unrealistic.
Well, and this goes back to perception is reality because our perceptions are changing, which means our realities are changing, even though we know each other for so long. These things change because we do filter the world through our own perception. It's just what we do.
Yeah.
And expecting someone else to just know
Yep.
what's inside of us at best is unfair, right? At best
Yep.
is unfair. But really, it just doesn't work that way. So, because they because even though we know each other so well, doesn't mean we can see through the same lens. That's the problem here, right?
Yep. Not in general, even with the people who are in your echo chambers, you'd be surprised how different the worldviews are amongst those people. It's in my circles. Luckily, I'm privy to it, so I'm able to sort of ask questions and constantly sort of get a gauge when I'm talking about anything, but it's important.
It
But
is
one
our
thing I want,
responsibility. It is our
yeah,
responsibility again to speak our needs, our feelings, our demands,
yep,
whatever it is, clearly.
we
And
have
if
to.
we have to, because or else you're not going to get your needs met. You're not going to be seen. You're not going to be heard. If they can't figure out what the hell's wrong with you, right?
Yep.
So
Unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments.
that's exactly what they are. That's exactly what they are.
But one thing I want to touch on with this too, especially when it comes to the broader populace, when it comes to meeting people, that whole projecting on people, psychologically, we are geared to catalog everything a certain way. Our
That's what our brains
perception,
do.
our understanding of people, our brains have to catalog every interaction. The reason our minds do this, you ever go driving and all of a sudden you realize you got to work and didn't realize it? It's because your mind is so used to cataloging that information that it makes it easier on your mind and your energy output to sort of put you into an autopilot. And it's we're not careful. It's very easy to fall into this with people because when our mind gets to catalog people, oh, you're just this, oh, you're just that, then we don't have to use a lot of brain power, but we also cut a lot of connection off or a lot of potential really good connections. And so we got to be mindful all the time of what is it that our minds are going on autopilot with and categorizing people with, groups of people even. Like that's one of the things that I hate the most is when we start putting large amounts of people into groups. When we do that, I mean, yeah, it's easier on your brain and helps you sort of just push people out of your life. But man, that's a whole bunch of people you're missing a lot of amazing opportunities with.
Yeah. Yeah, and that leads us right into another one of these pitfalls is avoidance and just shutting down. And I was going to say that some of us would rather bury our feelings, but I think most of us at this point would rather bury our feelings than to risk a conflict.
Yeah. When a lot of
Right?
us are just conditioned to do that.
Yeah. 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 So I wouldn't just say some. I think that's what we do. That's what most of us do right now.
It's like I've seen it within my own family, and we were. It's not that we're necessarily raised to be like this, but we've always been. Let me help everyone around me, and let me put all my burdens on my back with their burdens. And it's people don't need to deal with my problems. I can handle it best on my own. Let me just shut down and avoid bringing any of my crap up because it's not worth it. And I see
Well,
this.
yeah. Pushing
Yeah,
that stuff down doesn't resolve anything though, does it?
no, No, that's what this path has taught me. You got to be vulnerable. If you want genuine connection, you can't be stoic all the time. Stoic in itself is a vulnerable practice, believe it or not.
Well, yeah, you can't be stoic all the time, but you know, when you push everything down and avoid and shut down, those things don't go away. Avoidance doesn't mean that they just disappear. They fester and fester and fester and turn into stuff that's not good for you. And avoidance creates distance. Again, that's the opposite of trying to be connected to each other. When you just stop talking, when you just shut down, that creates a whole nother barrier to these intimate relationships we have, where we're supposed to be able to say what we got to say, right?
Yeah.
Because if we can't say what we got to say to each other, and this varies depending on what kind of relationship you have, but we see this a lot in couples, where little thing happens, all these little tiny things happen,
Yeah.
and you just suck it up and drive on, right? You just push it down, but it festers, and what festering means, right, is grows. It grows and grows and grows, and then all of a sudden you can't even talk to each other, and that will shut down a marriage. It'll shut down a relationship. It'll shut down even with family, because especially with those kind of people, you have a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? You have a lot of shared experience, and not all of it's great or flattering, right? We do weird things around each other, especially the ones we trust and love. So,
Yeah.
You at this point you should feel safe with them, and if you can't, then there's been a breakdown somewhere. So,
in my psychology class, as we're going into connection, they talked about all the different types of romantic relationships and healthy ones and negative ones. The absolute worst dynamic you can have in a relationship, so much so it's called the four horsemen of the apocalypse when it comes to relationships, is where you have criticism.
dramatic.
Yeah, it's crazy. You have criticism,
Mm-hmm.
defensiveness,
Yeah.
and stonewalling, which is where you shut down your emotions, and then that becomes content. And when you have that dynamic in a relationship, every time, unless you work through it, it will lead to the end of a relationship. It is the most toxic thing any relationship can go through. So again, criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt. It's in the
Yeah,
books.
those do sound like the four horsemen of the relationship apocalypse.
Yep.
So
it's a cycle.
the axiom that ties into this segment is agonizing over a situation to resolution provides limited gain and comfort. The price you pay long term for not letting go can be great, and often is great. The cost, right? What does avoidance do? It delays the pain and deepens the disconnection. Just drifts you further and further away. And, courage is important here, wouldn't you say? Because not only does it take courage to voice your truth, especially when it's uncomfortable, but also to listen, actively listen, and allow yourself, or really not allow yourself, but kind of force yourself to see them and hear them and deal with that uncomfortableness, because oftentimes it is. But silence is rarely the path to healing, right? Silence can be important in certain parts, especially when you're just sitting with someone. And that could be a conversation too when you're just sitting with them. But it rarely, in the heat of these conflicts, silence rarely is the path to healing.
Yeah. It can often be the loudest thing you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, because what does it say? I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't care what you say. I don't see you. I don't hear you. I'm just trying to get this over with, right?
I've dealt with a lot of toxic relationships in my lifetime, but the most destructive, most painful, most cruel thing I ever dealt with in a relationship was silence.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because then you do fall into these assumptions and these emotional storms, and you're trying to figure out why they're avoiding you, or why they're not talking, or why they're, everything around you is broken down because of the silence.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to have clarity and awareness in those times, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, our minds are meaning-making machines, so it'll find an answer. Often it won't be the right one, but it will look at every demon that could be hiding in those shadows and find out it's a caterpillar crawling across the floor.
Yeah. So what are some ways we can start to head these off? Start to create breakthroughs versus barriers to this.
I know we've touched on a lot. Active listening techniques. Like, I think many of us struggle. I know this was a big one for me. I was always someone looking to get my next point across. And that was something that, like, followed me through life until I realized this is leading to disconnection. So, active listening. Reflect back. Like I said, reflect back what people tell you. Tell you what you got from what they said. So they can either tell you heard it wrong, or they feel heard so that then they open up for you to give a response. Ask for clarification when needing. There's no shame in just being like, I don't quite understand what you're trying to tell me. Give me more detail.
Yeah. Yeah. And resist the overwhelming urge to rehearse what you're going to say because you're trying to read their minds.
Yeah.
This stuff doesn't transform itself by accident. It requires practice. Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, we're expressing this, and this is something we still work on daily. This is one of the hardest skills to master, is healthy communication. But with practice, you get better. Doesn't mean you won't have your moments, but the better you get, the more effective your communication and the more strong your connections are.
Or at least, yeah, and at the very least, what happens is you walk away agreeing to disagree.
Yeah.
That used to be a thing.
Yeah. Man, I haven't heard that term in a minute now that you say that.
Right. And yeah, my point exactly. When's the last time you heard somebody say that? It's crazy.
Another big thing is body language, right? 70% of perceived communication, 20% of the words you say, about 30% is, or 25% is the tone you use, and 50 some odd percent is body language. If you have your arms crossed, I'm talking to you like this, like they're gonna feel like you are on the attack. Be open. Don't cross your arms. Don't be trying to, like, sort of going back and forth, waiting to make your next statement. I mean, body language says everything. Be mindful of yours and be mindful of others.
I do that a lot too because it's just like comfortable for me. Like I just got used to just kind of sitting like this, but my face and my everything else is expressing openness, but or we do this a lot, right? We're holding on to our vests.
Yeah.
Or we put our arms down here. It looks like we don't care type thing.
But like you said, the face can say a lot too. I mean, there's a difference between
Yeah, have you ever ran into a Virgo? Yeah, their
Penny
face
was a Virgo.
Huh?
Penny was a Virgo.
Well, and she had trouble hiding her face, didn't she?
I'll tell you what, you knew what she was going to say. Oh, that's mind reading.
But as I said earlier, and I kind of consider this part of the whole active listening thing is, words, you have to listen with your ears, your eyes, your face, your body language, your words, because each of these things are only one little part of the communication. That's why, so for example, when you send me a big long text about something that's clearly a misunderstanding between the two of us, what do I do? I respond with you with, can you take a phone call, right?
Yep.
Can I call you real quick? And then it's not because I don't want to sit here and type out a whole long thing. It's because I want to make sure that I can hear your tone of voice. I can hear, and I can hear you expressing more of your words, as it were.
Right. Tone of text.
Because I'm not going to assume what you mean, because again, the written language is limited. It's hard to see these things. Thank God for emojis, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
Before emojis, it sounded like you were always screaming at people or whatever. Or you would say something that might have been a little risque, but really you were just kidding with them or something. But we didn't have emojis to say, winky face or whatever, man. Yeah, communication in that regard has really gotten better, honestly, with the little emojis. And I know that sounds kind of stupid, but it really has. True. It is true. So these things, body language awareness is important. What about setting boundaries?
Man, I think when you're in a heated conversation, it's important to be able to say no without guilt or walk away from unproductive conversations. It's like I said with that one, I got into a heated conversation last week and I had to just be like, hey, this isn't going to be constructive. Now isn't the time to talk about it. I even grabbed the person's hands because they were lit up like a Christmas tree. And it's like,
yeah, man, you got them all fired up.
Yeah, it's like, look, I hear you. I respect your opinion. Let's drop this.
You didn't have to see their body language that time, did it?
No, but it was there. I'll tell you what. I felt it the minute they started talking. It was like, oh no, here we go.
Man,
Here we go.
yeah, the thermostat hitting the ceiling.
Yep.
Those unproductive conversations, those are just arguments, and arguments never solve anything. They don't, and, I'm a fan of calling for space. Listen,
and I'm an advocate for picking your battles.
This has turned into an argument, which nobody wins arguments, right?
Not at all.
So, and that's wisdom. That's not weakness, that's wisdom.
Yeah.
Because really those boundaries, even if the other person is not wanting to separate, they want to just keep hammering at it, you asserting a boundary protects both of you from further harm or saying things that you're going to regret.
And even though this isn't someone who is in my life, this is someone I see from time to time. And you could tell just doing that created where there wasn't a rift in that connection. And I know when I see that person again, it's going to be like nothing ever happened because it was that peaceful resolution with disagreement.
Well, and what it does, and especially if this is a person in your life that you see often or every day or whatever, what it does lets them know over time that you will protect them from having regret too. So again, this thing, it protects both of you. It makes them feel like they can be more open and more vulnerable with you because you still got their back. Even if they're yelling at you or arguing with you, you still got their back. Because they know at some point you're going to be like, pause.
Yes.
You go over there. I'm going to go over here. When we're ready to be adults, then we'll meet back up and try this again.
That's the truth, though. I know it's like Allison and I, when we first started dating, we had a couple things that we didn't agree on, and we would try to have the conversations, and they'd be debates, but then they'd become discussions. And, often it'd be like, all right, we've gotten to the point where we're getting emotional about this. Let's separate and have a good night, and it would be great being able to do that. And now it's like, last night we had a discussion about something where we had different perspectives, and it was exactly that. It was a discussion. It was beautiful. We both went to bed right after. There was no heated emotions. There was no hurt feelings. It was just a discussion of perspectives.
Right. So how do we transform through healthy communication? Is it good for us? I think so, right?
I would say so. I mean, the more we can cultivate healthy communication, the stronger we can show up in life and the more effective we can be in those ripples we want to have extend outside of us. Because I think that's what a lot of these shouting matches are about, is people want to be heard, and so they're trying to make the loudest noise to make the biggest ripples, but in the end, it just ends up coming right back at them. Through healthy communication, we can start having discussions that change lives, change opinions, including our own. We got to not be so rigid in our opinions, because when we are, it's so easy to be defensive and to be hurt and to cut people off. But through healthy communication, we can grow, we can evolve, and so can our relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And this isn't just a skill set that we're building here, right? It is alchemy. It is alchemy. It's transformation. Because when we learn to practice respect, clarity, honesty, active listening, we create better connection with others. And with ourselves, even if there was if there was some sort of division there, right? This thing transforms that into connection. If you're willing to let it, if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to let these things be a teacher. Because, again, we're not talking about how to win an argument.
No.
Or how to win a debate or a conversation. The things we're talking about are here to deepen trust and create more authentic relationships, which is a pathway to healing. So, it takes us from division to connection if we allow it to be. But
and it's amazing this.
Or we can choose fear and assumption and try to read everybody's minds, and we'll just fall away. You can choose that. You have free will. You can do whatever you want, but you're going to suffer more. You will.
Well, and it's like, I'm sure anyone listening has had that moment where they get into one of those heated conversations. They're the ones who get that last point across. The conversation's over. They win the argument. Do they really feel better afterwards? Their ego might get scratched for a minute, but then the shame comes in. Then the guilt comes in. And it's just,
Yes,
that's
because
not,
we're dishonoring. We are dishonoring
yes.
that spark. We're dishonoring that spark, and we're dishonoring that connection. That is vital.
And
It is
ourselves.
literally, look, these things I'm saying literally spawned from creation, from the first. This stuff was there, right? It was there. So, yeah, you are dishonoring not only yourself, but the very, very fabric of the universe. There's Justin being dramatic again. No, I'm not.
No. You know, and you talked earlier about sort of just the respect you feel for yourself. When you can have healthy conversations, even if it doesn't go anywhere, when you can walk away and it didn't lead to a disruption of connection, it builds this sense of self confidence, this self worth. And above all, it makes you come across as a leader, you know? Like, I
Yes.
know,
Perfect. Yes. Yes. Thank you for saying that.
yeah. Well, and it's true though.
It is
That's the
true.
quality of a good leader, is someone who can
Yes.
actively listen and even if they don't agree, be able to still keep that connection strong.
Yes. This isn't just, and I know we spend a lot of time talking about more interpersonal relationships. That's on us. But understand that this ability to communicate in a healthy way doesn't just stop at our closest relationships with our family, friends, loved ones, or coworkers. It goes much further than that. I harp on it with you, Michael, when we were training together, because I want you to learn how to become a good leader. I want you to serve your community well, right? But I also want you to learn how to talk to yourself.
Yep. Yep. Because this also applies to self talk.
Yes, it does. It does, just as much as it does to talking to others. So, so yeah, people that practice respectful dialogue with each other, this is the way to start healing division. And even when your self-talk reflects honesty and kindness, as we always talk about in a lot of these episodes, you start to get closer to what I would call integrity, because you're speaking and you're acting in the things you practice, you're doing both out there and in here.
You got anything else you want to add to this?
God, I could go through a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I'll just say this, this what we're trying to convey, and I hope we did a good job, or at least planted enough seeds that you can tend to this garden that you're going to grow. We're really trying to turn these barriers into breakthroughs, right? And again, it's not just about exchanging words, it's about exchanging energy and light. Every conversation, again, is an opportunity to either deepen the connection or create more division. But these must become conscious choices. Don't let yourself just kind of be dragged along for the ride, right? So, again, truth has no regard for popularity. So, don't speak just to be liked. Speak your truth. Speak to be true. And don't listen just to reply. Listen to understand. So,
Seek
let's go
wisdom.
through our ethos real quick. I want to harp on these forever. Love tempers our words. Truth keeps us honest, especially when it stings. Integrity aligns our inner knowing with our outer voice. Connection reminds us that we are connected in this web of energy, this web of light. And the sanctity of life, respect for life, teaches us that every word that we speak, every intention, every thought, every action touches that sacred spark in someone else, for better or for worse. So, the agreements that we share, our 12 agreements, they call us to be higher, to hold ourselves to a higher standard, right? To respect each soul, to practice patience, take responsibility for what we're saying and how we're listening, to lead with courage. And when conversations feel hard, to try to extend grace to others. Give them room. So, and I could go on and on and on and on and on, but I won't, because we're already like an hour and something, and people are just like, oh God, get it over with.
It's such an important topic, though. Like, it
It
needs
is.
that. It needs 6 hours
It
minimum.
does.
We got
It
this.
does. And this is our second time hitting on it because it is important. It's one of those. It's one of those where you have to go back to basics every so often, so you don't forget the lessons. But anyways, yeah, nope, that's all I got.
Nah, I'm glad you touched on that, especially bringing the ethos into it and showing how it connects, because that ethos is at the heart of the teachings. And I think it's important to connect how all these topics, all these different modalities really tie right into the core beliefs of our philosophy.
They're at the heart of your teacher, literally.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And of your student.
Yes, I know.
Shall we jump into the affirmative prayer?
Just like that.
Yeah, just like that.
Head first.
Let us take a moment. Today, I affirm that my words carry truth, love, and clarity. I honor myself and others by speaking with respect, honesty, and openness. I release the need to be right, and I choose instead to understand. Every conversation is an opportunity to build connection, not division. My voice is steady, my heart is compassionate, and my ears are open to truly hear. Even when emotions arise, I pause, breathe, and return to presence. I affirm that I am safe, I am heard, and I am capable of creating harmony through communication. And so it is.
So be it, and so it is.
For our affirmations today, I approach every conversation with respect and openness. I speak with clarity and honesty, expressing my truth with kindness. I listen fully and deeply, giving others the gift of being heard. I release assumptions and invite understanding. I honor both my needs and the needs of others in communication. And each conversation is an opportunity for connection and growth. Now, for our exercise today, this is a call to action and is also sort of a sneak peek at a workshop I'm trying to put together. I want to start helping people foster healthy communication through difficult conversations. So, the first step is to find someone you trust, someone who values and respects you as much as you do them. Now, pick a subject you both disagree on. I recommend avoiding highly emotional and triggering issues. The goal is practice, not conflict. So start small. Practice the 3 pillars: respect, clarity and honesty, active listening. Stay kind and open and grounded even when you disagree. Speak with your truth directly, without sugarcoating or vague language. And pause to fully hear your partner when they reflect back what you understood before responding. Now, notice what's going on in your body. Pay attention to how your nervous system responds during the debate. If you feel triggered, pause, take a breath. Use these pauses to ground yourself before continuing. If you're with someone who you respect and they respect you, they will hold that space and allow you to regain composure as you choose what you're going to say next. Next, cultivate that awareness. Identify what your personal triggers are as they arise. Practice advocating for your needs without letting emotions override the conversation. If either you or your partner feels overwhelmed, pause and offer gentle affirmations such as, "You are safe. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. Take your time." You know the person you're with. Find a way to reassure them that this is still a safe conversation, even when you're disagreeing. Next, close with connection. End the conversation with a hug, a handshake, a simple affirmation of love and respect. Acknowledge that both of you were heard and valued in the beginning and in the end. Now, build consistency. Repeat this exercise regularly. Start with simple, low-stakes topics and gradually work your way to more challenging conversations. Start building those muscles as you build that conversation. The more you practice this, the easier it'll become, but it does take practice. And it also means if you take time away from doing this practice, you might have to start back from the beginning. So it's about consistency. For your journaling prompt, when think of a time communication broke down for you. Reflect on what happened within yourself and the conversation to lead to the disconnect. What could you have done different? How could you approach it differently next time? And above all, how could you have stayed in connection throughout that conversation?
And be honest and don't judge yourself. Stop judging yourself.
Yeah. This is something everyone struggles with to a decent.
We love you, so you should love you too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope that we were able to plant some seeds with this conversation because we need communication more than ever in this day. And the more we can foster it, the more we can teach others, This will leave the ripples you want to see. I know that we all have a voice that we want to have heard. There's nothing more effective at creating the change you want to see in the world than being the role model of what it is you want to see. Again, thank you for joining us. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucium.
Lucian.